Welcome to A Min in the Nude, where we expose everything except for our bodies. We'll leave that to your imagination. I'm so excited for our guest today. Her name is Cory Ruth. She's brilliant on so many levels, and she's got so much to offer us. So welcome, Cory.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Obviously, I'll let you talk about what you do, but Cory is a dietitian specializing in PCOS, which obviously, if you've listened to me at all over the years, I have struggled with PCOS and it's been a huge part of my life. So, hi, welcome.
Yes. Oh, the PCOS struggle. I know it well myself.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. So, I guess that's kind of where I want to start is, did you get PC or find out that you had PCOS and then become a PCOS dietitian, or was it the other way around?
Yeah. So I did. I kind of knew something was different. I remember being in high school in the locker room, getting ready, after a gym class, everyone's straightening their hair in the locker room and all the girls talking about, oh yeah, my period will be here on Friday, or, oh, mine's coming Saturday. And I remember hearing that thinking, how do you know that? Like, that's amazing. I have no idea when mine's going to show up, how long she'll stay, or how quick her visit will be. It was so random. So I kind of knew something was different, was off. And I think I felt a lot of shame around that. I felt like, to put it light, I felt like a freak. I felt like I wasn't the normal. And I wish now I could go back and give that little girl a big hug and really normalize a lot of that for her. And it would have saved me so much struggle mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all the things. So anyway, as I went through my kind of life after high school and into college and post college, I decided after college that I wanted to become a dietitian and get my master's degree. And it wasn't until after that that I got my formal diagnosis, although I kind of already knew because of all the wacky things that were going on in my body. And I started to learn what a big connection there is between what we're eating and how our PCOS symptoms are showing up for us. So when I opened the doors to my private practice, I thought, okay, the number one thing I'm not going to work in is PCOS because it's too complicated. It's too complex. There's too many moving parts. But then as I, kind of went along, I thought, okay, here I am, a registered dietitian with a Master of Science degree. I have PCOS too. I'm kind of the perfect person to step into this space. And so I did, and I fully embraced it, and I have never looked back, and I am so glad that I did.
I love that. And obviously I'm also sorry that you had to
Oh,
deal with
yes.
that.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but I love that you decided to go into that field, that you decided to include PCOS. There's a couple things that resonated with me when I was just scrolling through your Instagram, just how real you are about what you're going through and what other people are going through, figuring out connections.
Yes.
And just overall, you even said like you're annoyed that doctors don't refer people to dietitians. They kind of give their own advice.
Yeah.
So when I got my period when I was 10, and it's same
Yeah.
with you, where I was like,
Right.
I want that. I want that consistency.
Right. Yeah.
All of my girlfriends were getting it and they were relying on it. And,
Yes.
I think it's it's a big part of, becoming a teenager too. You're like, oh, this is so new, and I feel like it's spoken about a lot. And I had a lot of older girlfriends, more than
Oh,
girls
yeah.
friends my own age, and so
Mhm.
yeah, they, I wanted to be like them, and I just kind of struggled with my weight
Mhm.
as I got older.
Mhm.
My period never regulated. And just to fast forward for just 1 second,
Mhm.
only after my son has my period ever regulated in my entire life. So,
Oh my gosh, isn't that amazing?
yeah, I never had a regular period. I was fluctuating in weight. I was having a couple of gastro issues,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to
Heard of it.
17 gynecologists. Yeah, I went to
17.
17, and they
Wow.
all laughed at me. And I got everything from like, you're young, it'll regulate.
Mm.
Um, you must be lying. I got told that I must be lying about what I'm eating because
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
like you don't gain weight like that unless you're
Mhm.
eating badly. I mean, I got so many different things.
So good.
I got, tested for thyroid disease and diabetes and all of these things. And no one had ever mentioned PCOS. I didn't know what it was until
Oh,
I went to an endocrinologist. I went
oh.
to one endocrinologist. She was the
Mhm.
only person that truly listened to me.
Good.
Um,
Just takes one.
exactly. It was so relieving. And she was
Good.
going through all the steps and saying that we have to have a blood test and all those things to
Right.
confirm. But
Right.
she really thinks that I have PCOS, and I had no
Mhm.
idea. So once that was confirmed, she did not send me to a dietitian. But what she did do was ask me to try, because she was asking about my diet and what I try and eat.
Right.
And she asked me to go onto a low carb
Mhm.
keto diet just to
Mhm.
try it to see
Mhm.
how my body responds.
Sure.
So that was the beginning of that journey. And I want to ask you about keto and
Yeah,
how you feel about all that too. But
totally.
that has been the thing that worked for me, moving from more of a strict keto diet into a low carb diet, figuring out my body.
Yeah.
I
Good.
firmly believe and want to know from you, but from what I've experienced in my body, trying tons of diets, all through the years, trying to figure out what works for my body. I do truly feel like everybody is different and their
Yes.
body needs something different, and no one falls under that classic, this is the only way to be healthy, or women should be eating this way, or
Yes.
the
Mhm.
assumptions are endless. How do you normally go through the diet process with your clients or your
Absolutely.
patients?
Yeah, great question and big question. And we could have a whole separate podcast, a whole show on this topic. But I just want to back up for a second too. And you mentioned all of the doctors that you went to and all of the advice that you got. I really feel like women in general can be so gaslit in particular medical settings, and I feel like women with PCOS or women that are dealing maybe with severe endometriosis labeled as period pain, or it goes back ages and ages to the concept of hysteria for women, and we can be so gaslit in a hospital medical setting. So anyone who's listening who that resonates with, you're absolutely not alone, and everything that you're feeling is real and is valid. That's your lived experience, and you're entitled to that. So, and also too, when you got your diagnosis, PCOS, it is we don't talk about it enough, but it is actually the most common endocrine condition for women in the world. And it's the leading cause of infertility. So, it affects a lot more of us than we really think. And yet so many of us have never heard it. And when we get that diagnosis, I always tell clients, sometimes it's oddly validating, right? Because it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I have a name, I have a label to all of the feelings and the symptoms that I've been experiencing. So it can be kind of comforting, but also confusing and frustrating and saddening and all of the emotions. So speaking to the dietary side of things, the keto diet, we actually have research, and the sample sizes of these studies are small, but we actually have research that something like the keto diet can help to improve PCOS symptoms, help us restore ovulation, combat things like facial hair. However, what I know about keto as a dietitian, and what you might know also having done that, if you've done the keto diet, is it can be incredibly restrictive. And it's really, really hard to maintain long term. In fact, some of the reasons why we have such small sample sizes in those studies is because we have such a high dropout rate, because it's so difficult to keep eating
Interesting.
that way forever and ever. And when we think about something like PCOS, it is a lifelong condition. There is no air quotes cure. So we really have to work on managing it for the rest of our lives. And so we want to pick something, we want to eat in a way that we can maintain. And so what I find is a lower carbohydrate, not, eliminating carbs, because that's really hard to do. And, what is life if we can't ever have a slice of pizza or something? So, um, low carbohydrate, but high protein, high fiber. So I always tell clients, you want to focus on the PFF formula, which is protein, fat, and fiber. Those nutrients, so fiber is not technically a macronutrient, but I kind of like to consider it as one. Those nutrients are really satiating. So they make you feel full. And that's what keeps us from getting, a lot of us struggle with intense sugar and carb cravings. And those nutrients can really help to quiet those down. And they do that by helping to regulate our blood sugar. So eating a lower carbohydrate diet is actually better for blood sugar. And any listener who's like, oh, blood sugar, diabetes. Yes, that's typically what we think about when we hear blood sugar or blood sugar issues. We think about diabetes, maybe pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes. But blood sugar is actually really important for overall hormone balance. So one example with PCOS is when our blood sugar is imbalanced, it's not as stable as it should be. It can send messages down to our ovaries to pump out more testosterone. That's a direct connection between, between how we're eating and how our symptoms, and right, like that elevated testosterone in women with PCOS, it causes us to have facial hair, body hair growth, acne, hair loss on our head, weight gain, irregular periods. So there is literally a direct line from our blood sugar, which is impacted by other things, but mostly our diet and how our PCOS symptoms are appearing for us. So I like to illuminate that for my clients because it helps them to, I think it helps them to shift from, okay, just, diet, weight loss changes. No, there's actually a real improvements that we can make, as you've seen, with our PCOS just by changing how we're eating. And so more protein, more fiber. Americans typically get, I think, like 11 to 12 grams of fiber per day. I recommend 35. We're really not meeting those fiber goals. And fiber, protein, and fat can all stabilize blood sugar. And carbs and sugars, again, not saying we have to eliminate these things, but those can make our blood sugar less happy with us. And that can make our throw our hormones off. So that's typically the type of eating pattern that I like to teach women how to tackle and do it well, right? Because any of us can go eliminate this or that, but how long are we going to be able to do that? And then we're back at square one. So I really like to show women how to change their eating habits and meet them where they are and make decisions that are going to be more impactful for their PCOS symptoms in a way that feels good for them.
I love that. And I just learned a couple things. I knew those things, seriously, I knew those things kind of separately. I didn't put it together in that way. So I really appreciate you explaining it like that. And just to go back to like my journey with the keto diet, it was what kickstarted, I feel like, my metabolism. And I have moved to a low carb diet, which are really just slight adjustments. But like you were saying, it really is about what's attainable and sustainable to prevent that binging. And I've really figured out what I can and cannot have. Like I can go to a party and, and have some bread and I can have some dessert and, I know how to reset my body and I know how, like, what my cheat meal is versus my cheat day. And I really do think it is about balancing that. And I feel like people are so scared of fat. Obviously it needs to be healthy fat, but I like my good fats. I like my dairy. I'm definitely eating a high fiber diet and keeping my protein, on the, the mid to higher side. And essentially that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially that is kind of the less extreme version of keto. I feel like keto is the very extreme version of that. And I don't know if you recommend it, but I like to intermittent fast. That is something that I really love to implement. Is that something that you suggest to your your
Yeah.
clients?
I actually just kind of teach women to be mindful of just an every night overnight fast. So allowing the gut to kind of rest and
Hmm.
digest. So not trying to eat really, really, late at night and then skip breakfast the next day and go until afternoon before they eat something. I like regular meals and snacks, but that overnight fast is so important. I try to do, 12 hours. So if you have dinner at 7 p.m., try to have your breakfast at 7 a.m. Give your body that time every day to air quotes
Yeah.
fast, but really just to make sure that you're allowing everything to kind of, like I said, rest and digest, and make sure that when you get up in the morning, you're hungry, because that's a good sign. We want to be hungry when we wake up. It's a good sign when it comes to our cortisol and our metabolism. And we really want to, if you think about the word breakfast, we're literally breaking a fast. The first thing we want to put into our body should be something that's stabilizing for blood sugar, because that's going to give us energy all day long. That's going to make sure, we're not having those cravings and we're getting hungry a couple hours later. We want to get that protein, that fat, and that fiber in first thing when we wake up. Or not first thing when we wake up,
Yeah.
but within
I
a
know what you
reasonable
mean.
time when we wake up. Not like you get out of bed and then you literally jump to the fridge. Although some mornings might be like that. But yeah,
It
you
can
want to.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's typically how I work with clients.
I love that. And then the other thing that you mentioned that I thought was one of the things that I
Yeah.
learned from your past, what you just said, was the fact that you said that low blood sugar is in a way connected to your ovulation and your ovaries. And
Mhm.
so when I was trying to get pregnant,
Mhm.
I had I was in the mindset that, okay, I have PCOS.
Right.
I'm going to go into it with the fact that it'll probably take me,
Yeah.
over a year to try
Mhm.
and get pregnant, to maybe I might need help.
Yeah.
I didn't want to stress myself out too bad. I was like, this is going to be a journey. Let me get ready for it.
Yes.
Um, and I got
Yes.
pregnant within the first month, which
Oh
is
my gosh. That's amazing.
beyond lucky. Yeah, it's crazy. And I was so surprised and
Yes.
thrilled with that, and thankful to have a healthy pregnancy. But
Yes.
what I did learn in that short month
Yes.
was that I was ovulating, even though I hadn't had a period in
Mhm.
probably 6 months at least.
Oh, so you're on.
So for me,
Uh-huh. Mhm.
yeah, for me, at that time I was having like maybe 3 periods a year,
Mm.
maybe.
Okay.
And I would obviously never know when it was coming. It
Right.
would just be, surprise,
Yep.
Mother Nature.
Yeah. Probably when you went
And so what,
on.
right, of course,
Yeah.
always,
I'm excited to
terrible
watch it.
timing, always.
Uh-huh.
Right. Um, and so my endocrinologist had kind of like prepped me too for the fact that, I hadn't spoken to her as far as I'm going to try and have a baby.
Right.
But when we had had conversations about fertility, she was mentioning the fact that obviously ovulation is, a little important.
Yeah.
But that if I'm not ovulating,
Yeah.
there are things that I can take to kind of, to try and
Yes.
hopefully force ovulation. So I had all of that in my head. And then I was shocked
Yeah.
to find that I was actually ovulating even without a period. And so, yeah, I just, I crazy that blood sugar is connected to your
Yes.
ovulation. And of course it makes sense. And I mean, I'm sure as your gut is so important to everything in your body.
Right.
If your gut's not right, it can mess with all sorts of things in your body. Yeah.
Everything.
Um,
Mhm.
One thing I actually haven't talked about yet anywhere, so
Mhm.
surprise,
Yeah.
is
Lay
the
it on.
fact that yeah, laid out there. Women in the nude, is the fact that I found out I had epilepsy at 15.
Oh my God.
And
Wow.
yeah, and because I didn't have a regular period, we didn't realize until now that it's connected to my menstrual cycle.
Really?
I only have 1 or 2 seizures a year, but I'm always at risk during my menstrual cycle.
Wow. I did not know
And
that.
yeah, and so before we couldn't really connect it, but now it's clear that those are my risky times. It's like a week and a half period, no pun
Mhm.
intended, and and it's based on hormones.
Oh.
And I was told years ago that like women of childbearing age, it can be in their 20s, it can be brought on. but it was so like off the cuff, and like my neurologist at the time didn't even think that was possible. He was so actually, to be frank, he was very misogynistic and couldn't care less about women's health. And he wasn't willing to figure out why I was having my seizures. He was just focused on the pills he could give me. And which is frustrating in itself. But to know that your hormones and neurological issues can be so intertwined and connected, and the fact that controlling my PCOS helps me control my seizures and vice versa, it's such a, your body is so incredible, and the way that it operates is like a machine. You know, we take care of our cars. Yes. We don't take care of our bodies enough. We go in and we get our cars serviced. We get them, you know, essentially a checkup, a physical for our car, but we're not as consistent with that for ourselves. And so, yeah, it's been quite a journey for me. What do you, how do you kind of talk to clients who are trying to get pregnant if they're struggling with infertility issues?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's fascinating about epilepsy. I really don't know much.
Sorry, I know. I like throw 5 things at you and then try and get you to answer.
I'm used to it. I love doing podcasts. Yeah. So, okay. Let's talk about the infertility piece. So the reason why PCOS is the leading cause of infertility is because so many of us have problems with ovulation. So we're not ovulating regularly. And how do you know that? Well, if your periods are all over the place, like say you go, 87 days without any bleeding, and then you have a period or a bleed, and then you go 16 days and it shows up again, and then it's 55 days in between that, that's a sign that you might not be ovulating, but it definitely means you're not ovulating regularly. And what does that mean? You're basically, a normal period is defined as having a cycle roughly every 25 to 35 days. That's the general average. So if that's not you, it could be that you're not ovulating regularly, and ovulation is essential for pregnancy. Now, if someone is listening to this and they're like, oh, I get 3, maybe 2 periods a year. Can I get pregnant? Yes, it just takes one ovulation. And if we ovulate, we have just as good of a chance as anybody else. I had a client who ovulated on day 175 of her cycle. And her daughter just turned 2. So if we ovulate, yes, if we ovulate, we have a shot. But the trick is to make sure that's happening. And, if you think about it, if someone's only ovulating 3 times a year, and if you think about even pregnancy without PCOS, women typically have roughly, if you perfectly time intercourse, a couple has typically about a 25% chance of pregnancy that time. But however, that actually, as we get older, and I'm in my mid 30s now, so definitely something I'm thinking about more, but that percentage declines. So it's not, pregnancy is it's so fascinating. It's so elusive. It's so mysterious. Is it going to happen? It's something we really don't have a lot of control over. And I know that for people like me who are more type A, we want to have that control. We want to do right. We want to make sure we know what's going on. So it can be such a frustrating journey. But so if you have that ovulation or say you're only getting a period a couple times a year and you're like, I don't even know if this could happen. We just have to get you to ovulate. And the more times you ovulate in a given year, of course, you have to time intercourse correctly and make sure there's no other issues. Like, for example, like something with sperm health or something of that nature, that will give you more chances. And so, of course, that's a higher likelihood that you will conceive successfully. So it's really about getting women with PCOS to understand the connection between, like we talked about, nutrition, exercise, stress. That's a huge one. Adrenal health and stress is huge for us. And there's such a huge connection. Making sure they're taking supplements if they need some extra support or more nutrients if they're deficient somewhere, to try to make sure that all of these pieces, the gut health piece, super important. Like you said, gut health is tied to everything: energy levels, skin, fertility, It really is tied to everything. So we want to make sure we're addressing that. There's, several pillars that we want to be looking at to make sure we're giving someone all of the support they need in order to successfully conceive. And then, of course, the rest is up to them to time it correctly. Make sure that they have explored if there's anything else in addition that could be preventing that process. For example, ovulation is not the only thing, when it comes to pregnancy that needs to happen. We want to make sure your tubes are open. There's no scarring. Like I mentioned, your partner's sperm is healthy. Make sure your egg quality and egg reserve is there. Again, as we get older, we're actually born with all of the eggs that we'll ever have. So we continuously lose them, unfortunately, as we get older. And that's why fertility declines as we get older. Not to say it can't happen, of course, but your chances are going to be, lower if you're in your early 40s versus 25, right? So we also have to consider egg reserve and egg quality, because the quality of our eggs also declines. And this is true for men too. Sperm also, men are not exempt from age-related fertility decline. Sperm can age and basically get, misshapen, or they swim backwards. We have more of that as men age as well. Yeah.
I didn't know they could swim backwards. I'm sorry.
Yes,
it's not funny, but it's funny.
Going the wrong way. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Yes, I know, right? Yeah, the one in the bunch. It's like you have one job.
Seriously.
So, yeah. Yeah. So we want to make sure that we're supporting all aspects of fertility, and ovulation is kind of number one as far as PCOS is concerned. So I get asked a lot, how do I know if I'm ovulating? Right? Like, how do I know that? It's not like, we get a text from Mother Nature. It's like, hey girl, like, it's time to go, like, get ready. That would be nice. Although we don't have that system as of now. So one thing you can do is to track your temperature. And that sounds crazy, right? We think of like a temperature, a thermometer, brain fart, when we're sick.
A basal. No, you're good. Yeah. 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 A basal thermometer, right? That's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. BBT, we call them, basal body temperature. Yeah. And you can actually use your body temperature to tell you that you're ovulating. Like, how cool is that? It's not something we can feel. Yeah. It's not like we're walking around like sweating all the time after we ovulate. It detects like really changes. And we have such cool stuff right now out. We have the one that I love and use and recommend. It's like a wearable. You can just slap it on your arm at night, wear it at night, take it off whenever you wake up, and it tracks your temp all night long. And it gives you an average. And once your temperature rises and it stays high, you know that ovulation has been confirmed. And there's all different kinds of apps. This is very different than a period tracking app, by the way, y'all. If you're like, I have that. This is a more kind of intricate system, but it is the coolest thing, because not only can we confirm that we ovulated, like, yes, my body's doing its thing, it's on track, but we can also troubleshoot if there are problems, right? If we ovulate, if we're trying to get pregnant, we really want to make sure we have a healthy, long, what we call luteal phase, which is the time from ovulation to the time when you would get a period. And the reason why is because that's when progesterone wants to stay high, and progesterone maintains a pregnancy. So if that phase is too short, we're not producing enough progesterone, and we can't get pregnant with that. We need that progesterone. So by tracking your basal body temperature, we can see, oh, your luteal phase is actually only 9 days. And it's fixable. There are things we can do to lengthen it, but that's something that you would never know if you weren't tracking your temperature and you didn't know about ovulation and confirming that. So even if fertility is like, the last thing on your mind, I always tell, my clients and my followers that you should track ovulation anyway, because it's such a great indication, indicator of our health and hormone health, and fertility. Again, even if you don't want babies right now, or you don't ever, or whatever, wherever you are, just having that understanding of your hormones, and making sure they're healthy and your cycle is healthy is just so important. I mean, it's literally, your period has been called the 5th vital sign for women, really showing us where we are health-wise, and is there anything we can do to optimize that and get it in a better place. So I love that. I love that system to help teach women, how do I know if this is happening for me or not? Is there even a chance of pregnancy?
Right.
Where am I? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for me, the way I was tracking it was the ovulation pee sticks and
Yes.
that thermometer.
Yeah.
So I was doing both. And I had only heard about that when I was trying to get pregnant. I hadn't heard about it before, and I thought that was so cool.
So cool.
And I think there's a couple apps like that now and that sort of thing that are actually, I recommend protection. Let me
Yes.
just announce that. But I do know that I know a couple friends, and I've seen this come up, on Instagram ads and whatever, but how to prevent pregnancy as well. When when you're ovulating, when to not, have sex. And that is also helpful. So yeah, no matter what your situation is, I agree. It's so good to know, just, regardless of PCOS, just in general, knowing your overall health and how that's connected.
Mm-hmm. So
And just a total side note, I do think it's funny that when we are trying to get pregnant with a partner, my husband was not like this, by the way, just to clarify. But I have also noticed with friends, spouses, or partners in general that they don't want to get tested when it comes to their sperm. And I find that so hilarious to me. It's like, because of course that can't be I'm not the problem. It's always it's not my problem. Like, could be though. So I think in that way too, it's also good for men to understand their health. And it plays a huge part into their own hormones and what makes their body work. So I would say if there's men listening to this, or if there are women that are trying to get pregnant, encourage your significant other to go in and see and make sure that all of their levels are great.
So
yeah. And it's so crazy that, there are people that have one night stands and have a baby, considering how many stars have to align to get pregnant, which I think it's the most frustrating thing. And I can't even imagine, I didn't struggle with infertility, but again, I have lots of friends that had to, go through almost 2 years of trying to get pregnant with help. And you're like, how does that happen? Where you just, like, it's insane to me.
So true.
But it is scientifically, it's such an incredible thing. And I feel like and just in general, always learning more and more about it. And I think it's just, it's incredible.
So true.
And what do you see men as well? Like, do you have men come into your office, or is it just women?
I don't. I just work within the PCOS population. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But
I was just curious.
Yeah. When I used to do one-on-one stuff, a lot of times partners would come in and, listen in on a session. And I love that. I think that's so cool. And yeah, going back to the piece talking about how, some men want to just not get their sperm tested, everything's fine. It just doing that, but also just understanding like cycle tracking and even PCOS stuff, like that just makes this whole experience so much less isolating, and it becomes a collaborative experience. And like my fiance now, he will ask me like where I'm at in my cycle, or I will tell him like, hey, like, by the way, my period's coming in a few days, so sorry if I'm a little off, or sorry if I yell about that. But it actually is really nice, because then otherwise he would have just been like, wow, like she's crazy. But he can be like, oh, like her period's gonna come. Like he knows that is a time when I might not show up as my best self, and that's okay. And it really normalizes that. And I love that about our relationship. And I really love when partners can be involved, and ask questions. And I always encourage people who take my program, women with PCOS, have your partner join in at least the nutrition section, right? If like he's cooking some of your meals, or if he's helping you, prep, or he will know how to set up your plate. And I love that about my fiance. He's always very mindful. He'll be like, oh, do you want a little bit less of the, rice or whatever? Like he's so great about that. And I just love when partners can become part of our healing journey. It just makes it so much more powerful. I love it.
I completely agree. My husband's very supportive with that. And honestly, I don't think that I could, I mean, I could, but I don't think I would be as, good at it, managing my PCOS if it wasn't for his support, because like you said, it can feel so isolating. And even though he doesn't know exactly what it feels like, he has seen me go through that journey and understands how vital it is to keep it balanced. And just like you said, like your hormones, inevitably can make you feel crazy, and kind of, make your emotions and fatigue and a lot of things that come along with just even someone's normal period, not even necessarily anyone that has any issues.
So true.
Yeah. So it is so helpful to have a partner that you can talk to and, communicate that you need more support in one area or another. And yeah, I really do appreciate that. And also, congratulations.
Thank you.
When did you guys get engaged?
Oh my gosh, last February. But we are wedding planners. We just moved. So we've been, all the new house, all the move, we moved to a different state. So that's been a lot. So it's like, okay, we'll put the wedding again on the back burner, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen one day. And we have a 1 and a 4-year-old. So we're like really bad at this, but it will happen.
Oh,
yeah.
That's so awesome. My son just turned 3. And
cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Kids are, they're so fun. Well, congratulations on the move. And we took 2 years to plan our wedding, and I'm glad that we took that time.
Really awesome.
And it's something to look forward to, and try, as you know, try not to stress about it.
Right.
But it'll be fun when it happens. Yeah.
Exactly.
We've moved so many states.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Moving is just, it can be such a pain in the ass.
And moving with kids.
I've gotten better and better at it.
Nice.
Oh, atrocious. I moved across the US with a baby, and we've moved twice since with him. And it's a lot.
Yes.
It's stressful. It's way more stressful than without a kid.
It is. 100%.
Yes. So you got a 1 and 4-year-old. Are boys, girls?
My 4-year-old is a girl, and my 1-year-old's a boy. So got one of each, and they definitely keep on my toes. Yeah. And having
absolutely.
A daughter, yeah, I know. Having a daughter with, as someone who has PCOS definitely makes me think about it in a different way. Thinking about, like, one of my first thoughts when I found out I was having a girl was, could she have this too? And the statistics show that women, let me go backwards. It's daughters of mothers who have PCOS are 8 times likelier to have PCOS too. So it's definitely something that I think about, and I get asked a lot by women who have PCOS who say, can I prevent my daughter from getting this? And the answer is no.
Right.
However, on the flip side, think about how amazing it could be to arm yourself with all of the knowledge and the tools that you can, so that your daughter never has to struggle through anything the way that you did. And I think about that for myself, my own journey with PCOS and all of the weight stuff that I have been through and all of the hormonal stuff. I think about how lucky I am to work in this space, so that potentially, even if she does end up having PCOS, I can teach her everything I know. And she won't feel as isolated or alone or like a freak of nature, the way that I describe feeling, or like less womanly, or whatever those feelings that come up could be. My hope is that she won't feel that way because she has me. So if that resonates with anyone listening, I hope it does, because it's definitely something that I've thought about as a mom with a daughter. So hopefully she doesn't, but we never know.
That was actually going to be my question is, how are you going to address that? And what I love about that too is not only is she, very lucky that she has you, but even if it's not PCOS, even if it's just, in general, anything to do with her body, she's got such a great support system, and that is so lucky. My mom has, or had, a hyperactive thyroid, and I've got diabetes on both sides of my family, type 1 and type 2. And so I think we're just also very susceptible to these types of conditions. And so, it's so frustrating. But like you actually had said before, you know, it's almost validating to know what it is. Like I was so relieved when I found out that there was a name for it because, you know, you feel like you're going crazy and no one's listening to you and you don't know what's going on with your body. And so when I finally got that, I was so relieved. And yes, if you know your daughter has it, or for those listeners out there who think that maybe their daughters have PCOS or something similar,
Right.
Just knowing, I feel like we're always so scared of an answer. Like we don't go to the doctor because we don't want to hear bad news. But when you know what it is, that is the only time that you can actually move forward and try and fix it. And yeah, to get that head start on it would have been so cool. So
right,
she's in good hands.
Yes.
And then also too, like, you know, having a boy, whatever he ends up doing later in life, like, I'm like so dedicated on teaching him how to support other people, you know, men, women, people in general. And like being understanding towards things that you don't understand, whether it's women and what they're going through physically or just in general in anyone's walk of life. Like it is so vital to try and raise a son that will be a good partner to whoever he loves.
Oh my gosh, I always so true. Yep.
Yeah, it really is. Like when I found out that I had that I was having a boy, first of all, we were totally shocked. We thought we were having a girl because everybody in our family has had a girl first on both sides. So we were like, well, it's a girl. Yeah, we like didn't even really think twice, you know.
Yeah.
Did I what? Sorry.
Did you find out before he was born, or did you wait?
Yes.
You did, yeah.
I'm a control freak.
Me too.
Not in every part of my life, but yeah, in many ways. And there was no way that I could have waited. I would have gone crazy. It was right in the middle of COVID. I would have, I think I would have, it would have just been, it would have been too much. I would have rather held onto that secret and known and not told Hudson, my husband, than not find out. Like I like had to find out.
Yes.
But yeah, we were surprised when we were having him, and a couple of things like went through my mind. Just the importance of raising, you know, a kid properly, and no matter what, but also to how you raise a boy in this day and age, and you know the things that we are lucky to be more aware of, and things that are just more acceptable to be talked about. And but I also was kind of like, this is sad, and obviously if we had a girl, I would love that girl, you know, beyond. But I was almost relieved that we were having a boy, because I feel like there are so many struggles that women go through, and so many things that you have to teach and talk about with your girls when they're little, up into becoming an adult, that I feel like can just be so overwhelming. It's so important, and it's so vital to teach them those things. But man, is it a lot. And you having one of each, you absolutely know what that's like. Is it intimidating, or do you feel like you're, you know, I know they're still so little, but or, you know, are you and your fiance have you talked about it? Are you up for that journey?
I know. It's so true. I did feel that same relief when I found out I was having Cameron, my boy. But you know, I see so many things coming through so early with my 4-year-old. Like I mean, the toot is one thing, but I thought that started like apparently no. But like she's just obsessed with like accessories. Like she wants to wear a ring on every finger. I don't know why. She wants to put like 90 bows in her hair. She wants to wear her gowns to bed. Like she wants to wear her princess dresses. And I'm like, wow, this is happening. Like it's happening, you know? So it's like already that like physical kind of thing. I can see the very early buds starting to emerge. But the good thing is, you know, I have done a lot of thinking about how to address these issues and read up on them. And I think that's all we can do. But it definitely is, you know, and thinking about just all of the physical stuff that we are so pressured with, when it
Yeah.
comes to hair and nails and makeup and weight and just all of the things. It really is a lot. I feel like, someone could write a whole, I'm sure they have, but write a whole book on that, and I would read it cover to cover.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of pressure for sure. And, when it comes to the having a boy, I love what you said about making sure, they're a good partner. And I always think about that. And I always talk about that. We hear moms joke like, oh, like nobody's good enough for my baby. I reject that. Like, I want to make sure my baby is
Yeah.
good enough for a woman who's going to be good to him, obviously, but I want to make sure he's a good enough man. And that's where my work is.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to have that mother-son dynamic because, we get to instill in them so many things from the female side that they get to carry on with them eventually into whatever relationship evolves for them. And there's a lot of pressure there too, but I feel less so in that regard, me personally, than, some of the more physical challenges that I know are going to pop up with my daughter. So it's just really different. It's so different. I'm ready for it all, but I'm also a little scared. But
Yeah.
yeah,
For sure. And I was an only child, or am an only child, and still an only child. And I started in the industry when I was really young. I started in the entertainment industry when I was like 3.5, 4, and I grew up really fast. I didn't really connect with kids my own age. I was around adults all the time. Being an only child, I was homeschooled, and I loved my childhood. And I don't regret it at all. But there was a lot of those things that I think I learned good and bad early as a female. And my poor mom, she was driving me and my friend's older sister in the car. And my friend's older sister started talking to us about masturbation. And I was 8.
Oh my God.
And my mom freaked out. Rightly so. And so and so she was kind of faced with this, like, okay, well, I'm asking questions. Obviously I didn't know what that was at that age. And like, how do you deal with that? I mean, these were, it was me and two of, they're both girls, it's not like, it was curiosity, but also,
right.
It's like the older siblings or the environments that, people are around. And so my mom took me to the library, and I and rented this book. And she had me read it. And, I don't remember a lot about it, but I do remember it being very, a lot about autonomy and how everything works. And it wasn't, overly sexual that I remember anyway. And it was very, like, this is what happens and this is how it happens. And, there's no stork involved and all of those things. And one thing though, like as I've gotten older, what I think is so interesting, and feel free to disagree with me. Obviously these topics are very, I don't want to say touchy, but like it's very personal. Everyone has, different feelings on it.
Right.
But what I thought is so interesting about raising a kid is trying to navigate when they're ready for it.
Yes.
Because every kid is ready for it at a different age, or when you're put into a position like that, where, how do we communicate with our kids? Well, especially with those conversations that are really awkward and can feel really, I feel like, icky from a parent, but kids are so, I feel like it's one-sided. Kids are usually, they don't care. They don't understand it yet. So they don't have any weird feelings about it. It's like, but it feels weird to talk to your kids about that stuff.
Yes.
So like trying to anticipate those conversations is just crazy to me. And my kid's 3. I can't even imagine talking to him about that stuff. But raising a boy and raising a girl, I just,
Yeah.
I feel like, and there's a question here, I promise. Um, I'm not just talking at you. What I think is interesting, because I was talking to a friend about this recently who has kids that are older,
Oh,
was that her teenage son,
yeah.
yeah, she was teaching her teenage son. Um, Now he's got a girlfriend. He's almost 18. He's very much, almost an adult.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
she had a conversation with him, which he hated but appreciated later, about,
Uh,
you know, eventually, like, as a partner, um, understanding that what makes him feel good doesn't necessarily make her feel good,
oh, yeah.
and that he needs to be aware of that, and make sure that, that
Mm-hmm.
he's not just thinking about himself. And I thought that was,
Yes.
it's a hard conversation to have, but how brilliant. Now
Yeah.
everyone's gonna have a different opinion on it, and
Oh,
that is okay. um,
I love that.
but those conversations, I feel like, are not common,
Right.
especially, it's like they have to learn that along the way, and let's face it, some never do.
Yes.
But
It's
the
like, yeah.
fact that, like, women's bodies are different,
Yes.
women's bodies react differently, and we should be, well, maybe not, we should be, like, do you feel like that is something that is important to teach your kid, when they, let me completely say, only when they're ready, when they are close to adulthood? Is that something that you agree with, that, like, teaching them not just body health, but, like, that men and women are different, and if they are pursuing someone of the opposite sex, that they should understand that their bodies are different and they might need something else. By the way,
Yes.
this is an explicit podcast, so you could say whatever you want to say.
Oh,
I'm just, I just, I'm
yes.
dancing around it. I don't need
Yes.
to be, but I am.
Yes. No, totally. I 100% agree. I mean, think about what a different world we would live in if every mother took it upon herself to bravely tackle that subject with her son,
Yeah,
plural, maybe. Absolutely. And it's such a hard combo to have. And I say that lightly, or I say that not lightly, because I haven't had to have it. But I know I'll be there and it'll
yeah,
happen.
and same, obviously.
Yes, I know. Okay, so we'll be there. We'll be here before we know it, and yeah, I think that that is so necessary, and just something that we can't really expect for our kids to necessarily learn in school. They might get the more matter of
Yeah,
fact, very basic sex education like I had, but there needs to be so much more said there, and I think that is part of our job is to illuminate that for them, even if it's uncomfortable, which it could be.
yeah, right. And I guess it's more weird if it isn't weird. Like, there is a certain amount of, yeah. But yeah, I thought that was so interesting, and it just made me think a lot about how,
Mhm.
eventually, when Hendrix gets to that age, what that's going to be like. And I do feel like having, there is such a balance between being your kid's best friend, but also still being their parent,
Yeah.
and those lines. and
Mhm.
and I think ultimately too, just like, do you want them to learn from other people, or from social media, their peers, or do you want them to hear it from you first?
Mm.
And I think that, those are all just, and again, like my mom witnessed, sometimes you can't get to it fast enough.
I know.
But
Right?
it is,
Yeah. Especially
yeah, it's such a,
on social media. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I obviously didn't, social media wasn't a thing at that point. And so, yeah, when it comes to our kids being that age and what they're going
Mhm.
to potentially have access to, is just crazy. My husband's
Yeah.
on the side of not fearing it, and I'm doing my best to not fear it. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yes.
it's all relative. My parents didn't understand what MySpace was. I
Right.
loved MySpace,
Yes.
and there's definitely trouble that I could have gotten into, but I was a good,
Yeah.
I was a good teenager.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
but yeah, it is so weird, but it's like, okay, it's the same thing. My goal is to just keep up with
Yep.
everything that's out there, so that I'm
Me
not
too.
in the dark, like I feel like a lot of parents are.
That's
Yeah.
that's a really good way to approach it, honestly. Yep. Yes.
Okay, so getting back to what you do, um, what made you want to start the Imperfect PCOS podcast? Which, by the way, to all of our listeners, I will be linking everything from Cory.
Oh,
She
awesome.
has so much going on, and I love it.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a book on PCOS coming out too, sometime next year. So yeah, I think
Exciting.
just another platform, another avenue. I love podcasts. My favorite thing to do is to go for a walk outside where I can just, connect with nature and trees and the sunshine and listen to a podcast. I feel like I learn better. I take it in better.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start something that could give women with PCOS just another resource to learn. And we don't just talk about PCOS. We talk about all kinds of women's health issues, from mental health stuff, anxiety, depression, irritability, PMDD, PMS stuff, to, more of the physical things like hair loss, acne. We talk about, there's infertility. It really encompasses a wide range of topics. But as much as I can show up for women who have this diagnosis, the better, because, like I said, I wish that was there for me when I was trying to get a grip on my health and understand what steps I needed to take to just feel better, to just feel like myself. And yeah, so that's what drove me to make it. But I hope it's helpful. It's new, so it's definitely a learning process. But the farther I go along with it, I hope that I can beef it up and get more, guests, and just make it a really great resource. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, same, new podcasts, same boat.
Mhm.
It is, it's a learning process. But what I
Yes.
do know is that, building a community for women to,
Mhm.
understand themselves, know that they're not alone,
Yes.
grow and just figure themselves out is so important. So, thank you for putting that, out there in the world. Because what I also know about PCOS is that even though more and more women are finding out about it, it's
Mhm.
still very convoluted.
Yes.
And we need people like you who, are experts in the field, to be out there and be showing up on social media and podcasts and books, instead of,
Mhm.
because of women's healthcare, like trying to
Yeah.
find doctors that will listen to them,
Right.
trying to find dietitians that will listen to them. That is
Yes.
so much harder than being like, okay, here's a community of women all trying to do the same thing with
Right.
real information, and this is how we all get better together.
So true.
So definitely thank you for that.
Yeah.
What's your book called?
Yeah. I don't know yet. We've only gotten like two chapters down. So,
Okay,
yeah, definitely working on that. But I think it's going to be something,
that's awesome.
spinning it into a positive. Like I always like to say, like, PCOS is actually a superpower for me, because if I didn't have this diagnosis, I never would have paid attention to my health in the way that I do. I never would have
Yeah,
took it upon myself to understand my hormones and how they impact not just PCOS things, but my energy levels, my mood, how my period shows up for me and like what I experience around that, my diet. There's so many things that PCOS has given to me as much as it's taken away. So I think I want to just kind of spin it in a more positive light, because it is, we talk about it obviously so negatively a lot, but if I'm an
yeah.
optimist, so I want to point out the silver linings to the fact that we can use this info to really leverage our health. So something around those lines. I'm not 100% sure, but such a fun process. I love to write, and it's a nice excuse to do that. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah,
I'm excited for it. I
thanks.
wrote a cookbook, which is very different,
Awesome. That's
but
so
man,
cool.
it was so
Yeah,
fun, but
yeah,
it's a lot of work.
yes. That's
And
so cool.
it's obviously there's a lot of recipes in there, but there was also a lot of personal writing and stuff that I put into it. And I loved it. But it's not even that I underestimated the work, but
Yeah,
being in it, sitting in it, doing it, yeah, it's really intense. But it
yeah,
really is, putting a book out there, no matter what it is, it really does feel good. And
yeah,
it does really feel like a major accomplishment. So,
yeah. Like a big
I will be ready and waiting for that.
yes, thank you so much. Yeah, there'll be PCOS
Yeah.
recipes, and I love to cook too. I do a lot of recipe development. So they'll be like low carb, high protein, high fiber, but actually yummy recipes, because that's what
So it'll be a guidebook for me.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. So hopefully, yeah, hopefully it's helpful.
That actually is something that I wanted to mention because, okay, so for our listeners, the women's dietitian is your Instagram handle. And I did see that you have so many recipes on there, and it made me so excited.
Yeah,
Like your enchilada, your chicken enchilada soup. I was like, I'm here for that.
yeah,
Um,
good. It really is.
yes. So I thoroughly appreciate that. And I know people that follow you do too, because I think that is, obviously that is your job. You're a dietitian, but I feel like that is one of the hardest things about PCOS is trying to figure out what the hell to eat,
Totally.
Um,
100%.
and
Yep.
so I guess that kind of brings me to my next question, which is, yes, everybody is different, but what does your day look like? As far as when you get up in the morning, your routine, you tell me.
Yeah. For the cooking and the food piece, I have, like we talked about, I have 2 little kids and I work full time. So I never want to create recipes that are going to be time consuming and, fancy and expensive. I really try to make recipes that are really simple. And because I need that in my own personal life. So I keep it really simple, honestly. I do, because I do so much cooking for my job and my social media content. I do a lot of leftovers just based on what I'm cooking for the week. So if I have 2 dinner dishes, like, best believe that's what we're going to be having for dinner. Like, sorry guys. But they love to eat the food that I make. So it's fine. But, I get both my kids up. I make everyone breakfast. I'll try to do something really, really fast and simple. Drop them off at school, and then I come home. I work from home. So I do a lot of, content creation for social media. I run 2 different PCOS programs several times a year. So I do a lot of work within those communities and making sure I'm responding to everybody's questions. I have my podcast, my book going on. Gosh, it's like endless. There's so much. Oh, and then I have a supplement line, a PCOS supplement line. So I do a lot of work there.
Way.
Yeah. I love that. I'm coming out with a new one that's like an inositol product. So I do a lot of work making sure that my, sales are, on track and my inventory is in. And women, again, feel like they have one more thing that they can, put in their toolkit to manage them. So yeah, every day is different. I absolutely love it. I do leftovers for lunch normally, leftovers for dinner, probably. Like giving all my secrets away. I'm a big snacker. I like love snacks. I also have a huge sweet tooth. So I try to make my like desserts and my snacks, if they're going to be sweet, I try to amp them up with a lot of protein, maybe some fiber. That way I can make sure that I'm, not, my blood sugar isn't getting off track completely. So yeah.
Share those details, because I have such a sweet tooth, and always have.
Yes.
How do you balance that?
Yeah.
What kind of recipes do you suggest for that?
Yeah. So I always like to do desserts, or like I said, if I'm doing snacks that are on the sweeter side, which I kind of gravitate towards mostly, I try to make sure there's protein in them. So for example, like a really great snack that I love is like Greek yogurt, because it's really high in protein, but everyone's like, oh, plain Greek yogurt, like, ew, I don't like the taste. But if you add something to that, if you add some, like lately I've been microwaving frozen berries, and they just have a totally different flavor, and you can swirl them into your yogurt and it really sweetens them naturally. And then I'll add some chia or peanut butter to it. So I'm basically like making, or like some chocolate chips. There's a couple brands I like. There's one called Bake Believe. There's another one called Lily's, and then there's another one called Skinny Dipped, which makes the like chocolatey almond candies. Anyway, those are all sweet. Yeah, like monk fruit or stevia. So they're not going to raise my blood sugar, but they really taste pretty darn good for chocolate. So I'll add some of those chocolate chips in, and it feels it feels decadent. It
Like a
feels like,
treat.
yeah, a treat, which I want, but I know that I've got lots of protein and fiber to balance out that potential blood sugar spike that would otherwise exacerbate my PCOS. So, um, stress is a huge thing for me. Talking about daily routine, stress really impacts my cycle. So I try to make sure that I'm getting in some movement, even if it's just a walk outside with a podcast, to balance that out and make sure that I'm, listening to my body and really prioritizing that piece. Although I'm not always perfect at that. So it's a work in progress, but yeah, desserts are definitely part of my life. And I just try to I just try to boost them up with more nutrition to make them better for my hormones. Yeah.
So the Lily's brand, those are the chocolate chips that I get, and I love
Oh,
those.
yeah. Mhm.
My other question is, which I know like a little bit about this, and I try and steer away from them as much as possible, but sugar alcohols.
Oh,
What is your opinion on sugar alcohols?
yeah, yeah. So there's pros and cons. The pros are they aren't gonna spike your blood sugar, and they're usually calorie free. So that's nice if you're working on weight loss or something like that. But in large quantities, they can cause some GI discomfort for a lot of us. And I am somebody who is really sensitive to them. If I eat or drink a beverage that has a bunch of like erythritol in it, oh my gosh, I am paying for it. But
Yeah.
some people are like, it's in ice creams. A lot of low sugar, sugar-free ice creams use sugar alcohols, and a ton of them. I cannot eat those, but I know people who can eat like a ton of it, and it's totally fine. Everyone's different, but I always like to put that disclaimer in front of something like erythritol, because it can, if you're sensitive to that, man, it is like a horrible experience. Yeah. And I speak from personal.
Yeah, I have heard that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It can be great if you're not
Yeah.
if you're not sensitive, they can be great. But I love allulose is what I really love to use. That is a plant-derived sweetener that won't spike blood sugar. It's calorie-free. It's literally just made from concentrated fruits. So it's very natural, and I'll add it to my oatmeal. I'll bake with it. You can sub it cup for sugar. So any baking that I'm doing, any recipes that call for a sweetener, there's a liquid form that has the same consistency as honey and maple syrup. So if any recipe calls for that, I'll use that instead. So it's a great one. I've been loving using that.
I bake with that too, and it is, yeah.
Oh, nice.
It's the not having to think about it, the cup for cup ratio thing is because again, like when it comes to things that are practical, like that would drive me nuts. Trying to figure out the monk fruit stevia thing is just so much harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not my strong suit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, because again, with people like wanting to be able to grab something or like stock their pantry, and we're getting close to the holidays, and baking things that are okay for you too. One thing that I love about like the low carb, one thing I love about the low carb, high protein, good fat diet is that I do feel like I can go to a party and like enjoy the charcuterie board, and and not, I can go out to dinner, or I can go to events and not feel like I'm the one standing in the corner not being able to eat anything. And I think that is definitely something that is vital to any diet, is something that is sustainable. I know, to repeat myself from earlier, but that is definitely what's helped me, because in the past I have done that crazy binge. I think you call it Bingeville on your Instagram. I love that. I was like, yeah, it sends you straight to Bingeville. And that is the big danger. That is the danger there. And I feel like, in ways we're all guilty of it, whether it's like, after a long night out with, your girlfriends or whatever it is, we always end up there. And as much as we can prevent that, the better.
It's so true.
I do have one question that I ask everybody, which is, and again, to say before you answer, this does not have to be sexual. It definitely can be. I fall under, I have multiple answers to this question, in every different category. But what makes you feel sexy?
That's a good question. Gosh, there's like a bunch of things I can think of. I'll say the first thing that
Good.
comes to
It doesn't have
mind.
to be just one.
Yeah. Oh, okay. The first thing that comes to my mind is like good music. Like if, things are heating up and there's like Coco Melon in the background, that is a red light for me. Like, right? Like I need I love music. I'm a huge music fan, so huge music person. So I want to make sure that something that is going to be, I want something playing and it's got to be, yeah, it's got to be sexy. It can't be Coco Melon. It's got to be
I
something
love that.
that's gonna,
I was
yeah.
Oh no, for a second there I thought you were gonna say that Coco Melon was a green light instead of a red light. And I was like, wow, I mean
No, I would say
never
red
heard that one
light for
before.
me. Yeah, puppeteer
That's
on.
so funny.
Yeah, we're good on that.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, yeah, exactly. Like feeling like whatever puts you in the mood, or
Yeah.
like literally just doing something good for myself, or a shower, or
Yeah.
like whatever it is. Like, I do feel like women need to find something that everybody, but like women need to find something that like makes them feel sexy. It doesn't have to have anybody else involved, but like,
Right.
when you
Totally.
feel good, you're able to, I feel like, enjoy other things in life more. And you like have that moment of like, yeah, I feel
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that encompasses like confidence and passion and so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, yeah, just
I
music.
love asking people that question.
Yeah. I love
Music.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank
I
you.
love asking people that question because there's always a different answer,
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Someone will say Coco Melon. I don't know, but one day.
I mean, to each their own. I'm not judging, not judging.
Right? Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Cory, thank you so much for joining me on Women in the Nude. I am so excited for all that you have going on.
Thank
And
you.
I can't wait to read your book,
Thank
and I'm going to
you.
dive into your podcast some more.
Wow.
I just really think that you're just a huge asset to women. And
Thank
I'm like so thankful that you're out there,
you.
and that you can share in this journey too. And I feel like that's something that's so comforting, is to have someone like you who are you're so educated in the field, and know what it's like, and to be able to talk like this, in the most real, grounded way. So thank you for sharing. And obviously, to all of our listeners, Cory, I'm going to have all of your details below. You've got so much to check out, and I enjoy everything that you do. So
Thank
it was
you.
really lovely talking to you.
Yes, same. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having me.
And that's a wrap on another empowering episode of Women in the Nude. The conversation doesn't stop here. Stay connected with us by following us on Instagram, Women in the Nude Podcast, for behind-the-scenes sneak peeks, thought-provoking quotes, and updates on upcoming episodes. Subscribe to us on YouTube for full-length video podcasts, Sasha Pieterse, as well as visiting our website, Women in the Nude Podcast, for more resources and past episodes. Thank you for joining us on this naked journey to wellness and self-love. Remember, vulnerability is strength, and by sharing our stories, we empower each other. Special thanks to my amazing producer, Hudson Sheaffer, aka my hot husband, for making this podcast possible.